Yourself. That was when I trusted you, when I could add up 2 and 2, when you promised we'd be together, you, me, forever. Now there's nothing left to lose, and though I understand it's hard sometimes to make up your mind in these trying times, yeah, I just can't accept you leaving me when I'm overseas with the heart so heavy. Think that I deserve the truth for once, not a guilty tone. Come home, but I know you don't. So this time I'll hear it on the phone. If you got something to say to me, then say it to my face. What it's all about, why you're bailing out. Think you owe me an apology. Just say it to my face. You're sorry. It's so sorry. You're so sorry. It's so sorry. Say it to my face, you're sorry.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Good morning. We are tracking another day of trial in the Kimberly Potter trial. We are expecting that the prosecution will rest their case this week. But there has been a number of pieces of evidence that have come to light that have raised serious questions about the way that officers conduct themselves following an officer-involved shooting. One of the things that we'd like to point to this morning is testimony from Sergeant Johnson and a few other officers who found out that after Kimberly Potter shot Dante Wright on April 11th during a traffic stop, Sergeant Johnson took her gun. He took her gun, he put it in his holster, and he ended up swapping out her gun with his gun. So just for those of you trying to follow this, Kimberly Potter shoots Dante Wright. Sergeant Johnson takes Potter's gun, gives Potter his gun. And then later on actually goes to Potter and asks Potter for his gun back, removes the ammunition, and then gives Potter his gun back. And so a lot of people heard Sergeant Johnson testify to this last week. And then this woman you see here is a state officer. She testified to that as well. But the big question is, why the gun swap? Ben, what would make Sergeant Johnson take Potter's gun? I know some people have said, well, because at that point it's evidence. Okay, that makes sense. But then why would Sergeant Johnson in turn give Potter his gun and then take it back and take the ammunition out of it and give it back to her?
It sounds like obstruction of justice to me. There's really no other way to cut it. There's no logical reason for him to have exchanged the ammo or to exchange the gun for that matter. You seize her gun and put it into evidence. That means you keep your gun. There's never an instance where a police officer has to exchange his gun in order to enter something into evidence. So I find that that argument to be specious at best. That said, this is just another example of the gang that is the policing agencies across this country. They look after each other. They have a no snitch policy. They were trying to do, from my best estimation, it sounded like this officer was doing everything he could to help Officer Potter on the scene.
Well, and as you're looking at the guns here that were collected into evidence, the state officer was examined by the prosecution. They asked her, can you recognize this gun? And she's like, oh, yeah, that's Potter's gun. And he said, well, take another look. In fact, it was Sergeant Johnson's gun. And so this whole gun swap following the fatal shooting of Dante Wright has caused a lot of confusion with the evidence. And it just makes you wonder what the intent was.
That's right.
Behind the gun swap. You know, I've never heard of this. I've covered a number of officer-involved shootings, and I've never heard of an officer at the scene. And not to say it hasn't happened, but I'm just saying I never heard of it happening, where you swap out the guns. On the first, taking her gun as evidence, that totally makes sense. But I can't wrap my mind around what the need was for giving her his gun and then taking it back, taking the ammunition out of it and then giving it back to her. What was the reason of why she needed a gun at that moment?
That's a difficult question. Now, when you there's some possibility as you explain it that way. I do see whatever rationale he tried to have, but that is me giving him and extending the most good faith that I can possibly extend. You understand what I'm saying? Because if they were not instantly sure that Potter was guilty of anything and they needed to seize a gun, I don't know. I'm working really hard here, Georgia, to make this make some sense. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Well, I want to take a listen to a clip from Special Agent Brent Peterson, who testified yesterday as well. Take a listen.
Right there.
Pause. What did you observe?
It appeared to me in watching this that there was a manipulation in some way of her holster.
Why would you do that?
It would just make drawing the firearm easier, more efficient.
Okay.
And so there you heard Special Agent Peterson testify that her holster had been manipulated and that it would make drawing her firearm easier. Ben, yesterday, they also detailed the safeties that are on these holsters for both the taser and the gun. And I mean, it's the difference between an actual snap versus something that you're pushing or lifting. And so when you think about that, like cognitively, you know, you're going through a number of steps in order just to get your gun or your taser out that are very, very different in nature that you would have to think about, including you know, releasing the safety on your firearm before you shoot it.
Here's the other. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
George. No, I was going to say, as I'm listening to this and I'm listening to all the steps that went into it, it is far easier to believe that they made up this excuse of, oh, I accidentally used the taser after they realize what happened, because it is also very easy for us to understand that when Potter went up to that car, she was ready for action. She made sure that she could pull her weapon more efficiently. That to me states that she had a mindset. So I'm interested in seeing how the jury is going to interpret this exchange.
Well, I'll tell you what, Potter was red in court yesterday. There were several times. I know it's hard to see her on the cameras here, but the journalist who was in the courtroom sent me an email and said there were points where she was visibly red. She was extremely upset sitting there, having to watch that footage over and over again, listening to folks from the BCA and other officers detail the differences between a gun and a taser. They actually had a taser in the courtroom yesterday, and they were showing it to the jurors, showing them the different noises it makes, showing them the different weight that it is from a gun, all of these differences. And so I think yesterday was a turning point for the prosecution in terms of hard evidence that will help their case, that will help them convince the jury that this was not a mistake. However, what is going to be the defining moment in this trial is when Kimberly Potter takes that stand. If she's going to be able to convince these jurors that what happened was an honest mistake. But I'll tell you, Ben, it's going to be hard after yesterday. And it seemed like every single question the prosecution asked, there was the defense calling for an objection, and so much so that the judge was irritated with the defense, asking them to only have one-word objections. And so it got really heated yesterday, but I do think it was a turning point for the prosecution.
I'm interested in seeing how this is taken in, right? Because what is obvious to us, Georgia, and what is common sense and good faith interpretations by most oftentimes isn't common sense for those who are on the jury because of whatever reason, because of a convincing argument from the defense attorney or whatever the case may be, maybe instructions from the judge like we saw in the Rittenhouse case. But as we look at this, we clearly see the fact that there was something here happening more than a simple mistake. And even if it was a mistake that took a young man's life, and there needs to be accountability.
And, you know, as a journalist, I like to consider all things. And I feel like sometimes people, you know, maybe think that means you're a conspiracy theorist or something. But I like to at least ask the questions. I like to examine all of the things that have been presented to me, all of the things that I've observed. Sometimes people don't present things, but you observe things. And as a journalist, it's your job to ask the question.
That's right.
And one thing I observed that I didn't really hear anybody asking the question about, and I'll have to dig through, and we can look at it tomorrow. But on one of the first days of the trial, there was body camera footage from the officer who originally pulled over Dante Wright. And you could hear this conversation between him and Kimberly Potter as he was running Dante's information. And there was this comment from Potter that made me ask the question, does she know him? She made the comment about the Wright brothers. And I wondered what she meant about that. And I know that there is famous Wright brothers, but, in this incident, and her response after she said it almost felt like it had a double meaning. And so that it stayed with me, and it was just something I observed. And I'm not saying it means anything, and I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything, but I'm saying it was a comment that was made that I think people should be, and I hope the prosecution will circle back to that comment when Kimberly Potter takes the stand. And I hope they will ask her what she meant when she said that.
Yeah, George, I'd actually would certainly hope that they would explore that, because we have to actually take in consideration, a lot of times police officers do know their victims. Take a look at George Floyd and the previous relationship that his murderer had with him. So I'll be interested in seeing how this all plays out.
Absolutely. Well, I will continue following this trial, of course. I am back in the courtroom tomorrow. And so we are expecting the prosecution to rest their case at some point this week. And they're going to transition into defense calling their witnesses, which will include Kimberly Potter herself, as well as the former chief of police.
Excuse me, Georgia. We're also following these stories out of Kentucky, Georgia, the harrowing stories of people who were trying to survive the tornadoes that happened over the weekend. We're getting more information about the candle factory that allegedly did not allow their employees to leave, and several members of that employee team were killed, along with the information that we're getting out of the Amazon factory, where other employees were stating that they were not allowed to leave. And in fact, in both cases, they are being informed, or we are being informed, that there was a threat of these workers losing their jobs. And this is why many of the workers in the Amazon warehouse, as well as the candle warehouse, did not leave. And so there's investigations that are going into those situations, because in times of disaster or emergency, obviously, workers do have rights. The governor of the state has come out and said that they have not seen devastation like this before. And we can see the images on our screen, Georgia. This is a catastrophic event. It is an event where so many people have lost their lives, and to add insult into injury, the pain on top of everything else. This is just before the holiday season, and there's still search and rescue efforts going on, trying to see if they can find anyone alive. And this is a result of the 30 tornadoes that took place across the South this weekend. So we're keeping an eye on this. We have a couple of clips that I want us to play. But I'm just, Georgia, we talk about on this show a lot the environmental impact and the impact, rather, of climate change. I just don't see how we can effectively have a conversation about this tragedy without looking at the fact that this is a rare occurrence inside of the month of December for a tornado, a chain of tornadoes to break out like this. This is not normal. Yet, because of the nature of our news cycle and because of the absurdity of the moment that we're in, we don't have the bandwidth or the political will to actually look at the underlying problems here to help prevent a future tragedy. And I don't know what it's like on your side of town, but down here in the South, it has gotten warm enough to have trees blossoming again. We're having a false spring before we've even had winter yet. I think we really need to slow down in this country and take in consideration the underlying impacts of all of our actions that are exacerbating this climate disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And in Minnesota, I remember we would have blizzards as early as Halloween, and we just now got our first snow, and it's melting quickly. So there's definitely change in climate, even here in Minnesota, where we could see below zero temperature several times throughout our winters. And yeah, I mean, we continuously talk about this, and I just feel like, these are conversations that continuously happen, even outside of our show. But the people who are in positions to really make significant change on this refuse to listen. They refuse to look at the oil spills, the wildfires. They refuse to look at all the emissions from the cars. They refuse to help us lighten our footprint on this earth.
Yes,
and
that's right.
If we don't figure it out, if we don't figure out a way to make 90% of homes and businesses run on solar energy or wind energy, if we don't make a huge shift, we are going to be in trouble. We're going to have more and more cities across America that look like this. And it might not be because of a tornado. Next time, it might be because of a fire. The ocean, we might not be able to continue eating fish and seafood that we love because we are contaminating our waters with oil. And this is not just one body of water. This has happened in several places across our country. And so we are failing. And on a global scale, we're failing as well. We've seen the UN call us out as a country for our lack of responsibility on the environment. But what I'll wrap this up with, Ben, is it also reminds me of the important practices of our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
That's right. That's right.
Because one thing that they're experts at is caring for Mother Earth and caring for the different things on this earth and the wisdom and the knowledge that they have on the interconnectedness of the earth, the wind, the fire, the sky is beyond anything that I've seen in Western civilization, if you want to call it that, right? And so there has to be a shift. There has to be a shift, or we are going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah, and I think the reality is if we were to define what you just said, we are going to be in serious trouble. If we were just to be just purely candid about what that means, we are talking about the continuity of civilization here. We're talking about the survival of our species here. We don't have anything without this planet. And yet and still we have leaders who pretend as though because we have snow in the winter, that there's no such thing as climate change. We had a senator take a snowball on the floor of the Senate chambers and said, look, it's snowing outside. Therefore, there's no climate change. I'm hoping that this incident, it might be a fleeting hope, but I hope that this will bring light into the seriousness of climate change. I want to play a couple of clips here because the impact on the first responders is actually real. And as you can expect, here's a clip of a first responder explaining how many firefighters and rescue workers had to work 40 hours straight in order to keep up with the kind of disaster that they're dealing with. Let's take a listen in.
How are your people holding up? Have they at least been able to have a break, go spend time with family?
So our initial response put most of our responders into working about 40 plus hours at once. Thankfully, we got the overwhelming response from the state and local areas, local EMS services like Mercy Regional out of Murray, and with the help from Paducah, some of their leadership on scene. We began to backfill initially our department so that they could rotate off and get some rest and food and, hydration and change of clothes, something dry to put on. So that's where all of that is. We were stretched so thin and barely holding on.
Stretched so thin and barely holding on. And Georgia, I want to play this last clip. This is Republican Kentucky Congressman James Corner telling CNN that, well, now, and this is good news, that he cares about those emissions that we understand to be the underlying cause of so much of this climate disaster that we're seeing. Let's take a listen in.
In the past, you have denied global warming, climate change. Does this whole experience being here, knowing what happened, does it make you reassess your view?
Well, I mean, I care about the environment. I'm a farmer. I consider myself a conservationist. And I think that we're doing things on the federal level to try to make sure there are no bad actors or no polluters. Nobody wants water that's not clean. We recognize that there are storms and tornadoes, and we just passed the worst tornado in the history of Kentucky, and the previous one was in the late 1800s. So unfortunately, tornadoes always happen, but I think that it's a role of Congress to make sure that we're doing things we can legislatively to reduce carbon emissions and do things to protect and preserve the environment for the next generation.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Congressman Comer, thank you so much for that.
It seems every major weather event in recent years is followed almost immediately by claims on cable news channels and social media that its occurrence is directly linked to climate change. This overheated rhetoric can serve as a distraction from focusing on the proper role of the federal response to these disasters, which is why this hearing is convened. You've used the term weather amnesia as a way of describing the current public statements among some scientists and politicians that extreme weather events are now more frequent or intense and attributable to man-made global warming. Can you discuss what you mean when you use the phrase weather amnesia?
Well, people forget. Okay, and it doesn't even take long for them to forget. We had a bad tornado spring this year, a lot of tornadoes, but nothing particularly unusual with regards to previous years. And between 2012 and 2018, the tornadoes were way below average. And then all of a sudden we get one bad year and it's global warming.
Now, David, next, you give me the heads up on that one. But the thing with that clip is the juxtaposition, right? During the tornado recovery, Congressman Comer is like, I'm all about these emissions. But we see his work leading up to it was the propaganda, right? It is a very insidious type of propaganda where it head fakes, it punt fakes. Of course, I care about the environment, but global warming, that couldn't possibly be the cause of it. It was some of the sentiment that I was getting from that last testimony. But the issue, Georgia, is that we got to follow the science here. One thing I am particularly tired of is this willingness to just ignore facts. The climate is changing. We have the data and we have the disasters to show it. So we simply just don't have time for these games from our politicians.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's sad that a lot of these politicians aren't going to care until they are affected, until the disaster hits their backyard, until it not only hits their constituents, but it hits their back door. And so I think in this instance, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, someone who is in their ivory tower that doesn't have to care about these issues. And now that it's hit his back door, now he has to do something because he's affected and people he knows is affected. And, I thought about what I said earlier in terms of we are going to be in trouble. And I don't know if that embodies the sense of urgency, that we really need to have in this moment. I mean, we might be beyond foreshadowing what's going to be happening in the future. I mean, Ben, there's a lot of evidence and data to say that we are in trouble right now as we speak.
Right now as we speak, Georgia. And I often wonder, like, this is my conspiracy. You mentioned one of your potential conspiracies. Here's my potential conspiracy. The only thing that makes sense, two things. We have sociopaths who have control of society, who will literally run this earth into destruction for the sake of their quarterly profit margins, right? Possibility one. Possibility two that makes sense is they already know we're damned. And so they're just having fun before the end of the world. One of those two things, because if you have the evidence that we can fix our problem, but you're ignoring it till we get past the brink where we cannot fix it, well, then that is, I mean, I can't even say that's criminal. That's an offense against humanity because they are playing with our very lives.
Well, I mean, history repeats itself, and historically there have been eras of genocide, and I'd hate to say that horrific type of history will repeat itself. But when you see, especially corporate leaders who have the finances to do something, and you see them continuously do nothing, the actions speak for themselves.
That's right. That's right. And actually, I would go one step further. They're not doing nothing. They're actively doing things to make it worse, right? They are actively doubling down on fossil fuels. When we have the technology and we can make that conversion, but because a conversion to electricity versus fossil fuels driving our cars is going to cost them quarterly profit margins, they would rather ignore it and just run this entire planet into the ground. And that's just one example of one industry, let alone all the other industries. And forget about the fact that Jeff Bezos just flew into space, leaving a huge carbon imprint that we cannot take back, all because he wanted to go on a joyride.
Well, and like largely our society is reactionary. There is very, very few things that we do as a culture that are preventative. That's right. And so I feel like even if you look at where we are with technology today in a post-pandemic, or we're still going through the pandemic world, think about how much of the technology existed before the pandemic that we just didn't rely on. Think about how many businesses now that are deciding to just go remote because they can meet through Zoom. Anderson Windows has technology that they're using to measure people's windows remotely without even having to show up. You have doctor's visits now that are happening virtually as well. You don't even have to physically go into a clinic to be seen by your doctor anymore. All of these different advances that we've made because we've had to. They're reactionary, right? But the technology for these things to happen was already in place before. Yes. And so what I would hate to have happen, like you're saying, is like we have the technology to do better. We have solar panel technology that could be implemented on a household level, on a commercial property level. That's right. We have wind energy. We have all of these different things that we have in place that we could, but we have to wait until something really, 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 really bad happens in order for us to react to that. Like, why can't we be preventative when we have all the tools and the resources to be operating at a more efficient and environmentally safe level?
Georgia, that's exactly right. And coming up in the next hour, I'm going to be speaking with LA City Council member Mike Bonin and talking about something very similar to that, which is if we have the capacity, the know-how, and the technology to address an issue. In his case, we're going to be talking about addressing homelessness. In LA, they have a solution and they're implementing some solutions to homelessness. But these solutions are here for every city to implement. And so we're going to get those good ideas and hopefully we can spread those good ideas. But when we have the capacity to do better, Georgia, I think we absolutely must.
I agree 100%. We'll keep it here for that and more on The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Good morning, people. Y'all know the voice. Y'all know the sound. It's the DJ exclusive James. Bubba Mac DJ exclusive. You know the DJ exclusive. I don't know who that is. Dwayne, you know who that is? Good morning, everybody. Good morning, y'all. Come on in. Come on in. Get this way to get settled. Get your coffee. Get your drink. Whatever it is you need to get your morning started. The exclusive is in the video.
Get on with it. Come on, get on with it. Come on, get on with it. Come on, get on with it. This is what I say.
Good morning, Nicole Johnson, One Source Productions. Brother Chuck Diesel.
This is what I say.
Hollywood Diesel. Kristen Lionheart, good morning. Ryan, good City Socialist, Iris Jones. Tiger, what's going on? Church Lady Shelby Hall. Good morning, y'all. I see y'all here. Shoot the Dragon. Muffin stuff. Mark S, what's going on? Tyler, what's going on, Brother Tyler? Angela Newman. Nikki Cruz, thank you for your super chat. Being going off this morning. Peace to the family. Amen to that. Melanie Dennis, Amber G. Good morning, everybody. Kev Z, what's going on, brother? Y'all come on in and get situated, get settled, man. Afraid Not, what's going on? One Lost Spirit, what's going on, man? Good to see everybody this morning. I hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend, holiday, and everything else. Hope y'all ate goods and all that good stuff, man. Watch some good TV. Got some Black Friday shopping done, all of that good stuff, man. Y'all come on in and get situated, y'all. Good morning, the Benjamin Dixon Show, y'all. Stay tuned. Lily, good morning. Track Natasha, Roller Dragon, what's going on? A.R. Walker, Deb, what's going on? Kareem, Dragon Ball, super dope. Good morning. Happy belated birthday to Church Lady. Brenda Johnson, good morning. F8L Flaw Dragon, good morning. Patty P, good morning, Patty. Sonny Wright, what's going on? Ricky, good morning, y'all. Y'all stay tuned, man. We got more coming up next. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned. Amber Layla, good morning, Amber. Hey, Miss Sophia, good morning. Susan, good morning to you, Susan.
And maybe I just wanna let it shine. There is no good or better. I think tonight I'm gonna make it mine. I stepped out, stepping on next. Little baddie, cashing big checks. I bought the whole block out, now that's a
Nicole
big
Johnson, why are you jealous, Nicole?
Window, like what's next? Got new levels and new devils out the wazoo. Ain't no worries, life gets better when you find you. And if you mind you, peace will abide.
Esther Brochen, good morning.
Time to start anew. So live it up, we grown, ain't got no curfew. Who brought the
Ricky, good morning to you. Stephanie Ramsey, good morning.
That's a bitch move. Press that I arrive, now that I survive. All your sad attempts to send me to the sky. But I've been in the wind, been had wings. I was always this fly. Oh yes, and that's probably why you're mad. Don't let Evie turn you into a trash bag. So get glad, find out why you sad. All that jealousy, you should
Tasia, good morning.
I think it's time to turn that mirror on you. Put it up close for a clear view. And look deep down inside. And soon you will find a pretty soul that needs more shine.
Nicole Johnson, you know I still love you.
Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Welcome back, everybody. It is today, which is Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. Thanks so much for joining us. Momentarily, we're going to be joined by our guest, Los Angeles City Council member Mike Bonin. We're going to be discussing what they are doing, the innovations that are happening in that city, in that county, with homelessness. There's some innovation that's happening that I really would love to see spread across the country, and we're going to be discussing that momentarily. DJ Exclusive, even though you heard his voice, he is not with us today. He is probably somewhere on a beach in Jamaica drunk with someone's son. So shout out to our homeboy doing his thing for his birthday. DJ Exclusive, good morning to you. That said, we are not going to have Like It or Not today because Rebecca Azora is out, and y'all know me. Don't leave me on air for an entire hour and a half by myself. I get in trouble. So no Like It or Not today. We get in so much trouble. So that's the voice of David in the background, our producer, to make sure I don't get in trouble this morning. But I'm going to talk about something that really I'm not going to get in trouble over because it's so absurd. January 6th. Now, if the conversation was about Amazon and how Amazon really just ignored the lives of the people in their factory that died during that tornado, or that candle factory, if we were talking about workers' rights, then I probably would be in trouble. But we're talking about the absurdity of January 6th. Text messages have come out that show exactly what the communication was going on between people like Laura Ingraham from Fox News, with Chris Meadows, who is or was the chief of staff for Donald Trump during the time. There was even a text message from Don Jr., all of them telling the president, Donald Trump, on January 6th to make an address to tell his supporters to stand down because, according to Laura Ingraham, this is going to hurt us all. Well, Laura Ingraham that night on Fox News went up and said that it wasn't even Donald Trump supporters. We have a clip to discuss that momentarily, but I want to run this first clip that gives you a good breakdown of every text message communication that was sent to the president of the United States on January 6th, telling him from his friends, from his loved ones, from his family. He don't even love Don Jr., but Don Jr. warned him that this would be bad for the country. Let's take a listen in.
Dozens of texts, including from Trump administration officials, urged immediate action by the president. Quote, POTUS has to come out firmly and tell the protesters to dissipate. Someone is going to get killed. In another, Mark, he needs to stop this now. A third, in all caps, tell them to go home. A fourth, and I quote, POTUS needs to calm this shit down. Indeed, according to the records, multiple Fox News hosts knew the president needed to act immediately. They texted Mr. Meadows, and he has turned over those texts. Quote, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy, Laura Ingraham wrote. Please get him on TV, destroying everything you have accomplished, Brian Kilmeade texted. Quote, can he make a statement? Ask people to leave the Capitol, Sean Hannity urged. As the violence continued, one of the president's sons texted Mr. Meadows, quote, he's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough, Donald Trump Jr. texted. Meadows responded, quote, I'm pushing it hard. I agree. Still, President Trump did not immediately act. Donald Trump Jr. texted again and again, urging action by the president. Quote, we need an Oval Office address. He has to lead now. It has gone too far and gotten out of hand, end quote. But hours passed.
Hours passed. Now, that was the voice in the face of Liz Cheney, a Republican, a never Trumper, not particularly a good person, but she's on the right side of history here. And she's making it clear all of the different actors. And here's the thing. Why does Fox News host have the direct line to the chief of staff of the president of the United States? And I would argue some of them probably have his direct phone number, the president of the United States phone number at the time. Fox News is entirely too powerful to be filled with sociopathic propagandists who want nothing more than to stir up bloodlust amongst their supporters. And they have the keys to the kingdom, or at least they did during the Trump presidency. Here's a clip of Adam Schiff. Talking about the day after a failed attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power through violence. An elected lawmaker tells the White House, I'm sorry, nothing worked. Let's take a listen in.
The answer. For example, the documents confirm that Mr. Meadows used personal Gmail accounts and a personal cell phone to conduct official business and to send communications related to January 6th, and that he also used Signal, the private messenger application. Had Mr. Meadows been deposed under oath, the committee would have asked him about his handling of official government records, a topic that is not subject to any conceivable legal privilege. This is a critical line of inquiry because we need to know if Mr. Meadows did not properly preserve all of his official emails, texts, and messages and provide them to the National Archives as required by law. After all
right. So that wasn't Adam Schiff, but that was an important exchange discussing the fact that Mark Meadows was held in contempt. And there possibly is even more. We don't know. The committee doesn't know until they actually get Mark Meadows to respond properly to their investigation. I want to play this last clip before we go to our first guest. I want to play this clip from CNN, and they break it down how we should view this new evidence. I particularly want you to listen to the fact that Fox News actively lies every single day on their network. Take a listen in.
And don't forget Laura Ingraham, who said, this is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy. This is Laura Ingraham, who mocked the police officers after they testified before the committee. Look, if you are someone who believes Fox News anchors like Laura Ingraham, if you are a fan of Donald Trump Jr., what are you thinking tonight? If you are hearing this, you should be thinking, I think, that these people are imposters, that they have been double dealing you. Here they were texting Mark Meadows the day of the insurrection and saying, get this to stop. This is terrible for all of us. And yet now they are portraying the insurrection as something that was close to a walk in the park. Right. So that the police officers should be mocked, that Donald Trump did nothing wrong.
So to your point, what we heard tonight, I believe, is just a small number of the text messages. I was told by a source familiar that there are hundreds of text messages that the committee thinks are relevant. And so I think there's more to come. This was just the beginning. This is a day of reckoning for Donald Trump because we don't like to use the word lying as reporters, but look at these Fox News hosts. They have been lying. They were lying on January 6th. They go on social media every day. They go on the air and pretend January 6th was not a big deal.
Here's a problem, David. I want to bring you in. Here's a problem. Fox News is leading all the ratings. So it's a good chance nobody even saw that.
Yep. No, they didn't play any of this yesterday.
Right. It's a good chance that analysis that they just gave, 100, 200,000 people saw it as compared to like the millions of people who watch Fox News, because Fox News has had both the propaganda as well as the funding to get to the top of the mountain. So while CNN is correct, David, more people are listening to Sean Hannity than the entire network of CNN.
Yeah, no, that was the first thing in my mind when I was watching the CNN clip yesterday. And for sure, CNN has its own issues. So it's not like, we're propping them up or anything, but Fox takes the cake, at least in terms of traditional mainstream media. And Fox, like both they take the cash and they are the worst. And what's glaring is how to the extent to which the narrative on TV is different from how they are behind the scenes. And they didn't play any coverage yesterday, or at least minimal, on their channel of the committee. They were focusing instead on whatever narratives they create around the Biden administration and losing America and whatnot. But they're a good source of the reason why America is declining.
That's right. That's right. Without question. I mean, you look at Fox News and you think of this pandemic. You look at Fox News, you think of climate disaster. You look at Fox News and you just think of the various wars that they wholeheartedly endorse. Fox News is at the epicenter of the decay of this country. Now, they're not by themselves. Fox News simply understood how to pimp aggrieved white people and the people of color who are complicit with them. They understand that there was a thing in America that was easily monetizable. And that thing was hatred and bigotry. Why? Because it's America. So Fox News, while they are at the core of the rot of this country, Fox News just came in with a check and said, I know how I could make even more money. Let's play on the bigoted, hate-filled, sociopathic tendencies of Americans, because that's what America turns us all into, right? America has all of us wanting to be the next billionaire and step on other people as we move up. Like, this country breeds sociopaths. And so Fox News just said, I know how to make money off of that. Rupert Murdoch. And he did a good job. I mean, because honestly, they are the biggest news network right now, if you want to call them news. And they have millions of people who listen to them all day long. Every single bar you go into, it's on the television. Fox News. Hell, you could probably even go into some strip clubs in black cities. Not that I have. It's going to be on the television because Fox News is everywhere. They know what they're doing and they're masters of propaganda. And I'm not sure that we recover as a nation if Fox News is allowed to just keep on operating as if nothing happened. Chris Wallace had enough sense to get out of there. He resigned. So
yeah, he dipped. They're losing all of their traditional quote unquote journalists and anchors. Because behind the scenes, they're getting attacked as well by the entertainment side, who's just playing both sides.
That's right. That's right. They're eating themselves at Fox News. The journalists who tried to be journalists, kind of, sort of, like Chris Wallace, he did a great job, but he also fell into that same Fox News stuff. So he's not a hero of ours, but he wasn't crazy enough for Fox News. And they started attacking him because he would not go in lockstep with Donald Trump. That's what we're dealing with. That's the nature of Fox News. That's the nature of the political and media landscape. And if something doesn't change, they are literally pushing all of the buttons that could destroy humanity. And we're all just, sitting back like, it's fine.
Yeah. We are trying to connect with the guest, with Council Member Bonin. So why don't we take a quick break, see if we can get him connected. If not, we can, maybe do one more segment and call it.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me twice. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show right after this quick break. I knew that. In my mind, I'm like, there we go.
Good morning, people. Y'all know who it is. Y'all know the voice. Y'all know the sound. It's the boy James Williams, DJ Exclusive, in the building. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned, man. We got one coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Little baddie, cashing big checks. I bought the whole block out, now that's a big flex.
No, sir, it is he in the flesh, like blue shirt and all.
Got new devils and new devils out the wazoo. Ain't no worries, life gets better when you find you. And if you mind you, peace will abide and hide you until it's time to start a
Pastor Anthony Galloway, man.
Ain't got no curfew. Who brought the bad vibes? Tell that bitch move. Walking all in my inner, that's a bitch move. Press that I arrive.
Laura Strada, KFZ, Jeremiah, Lily, manifested. Showston, what's going on? Tiger, what's going on, Tiger? Bunny Rabbit, I'm so high. Okay, buddy. Juanita, good morning. Jonathan Esther, on and go.
Jealousy, you should subside.
Licorice, good morning. Movie. Hey, Lou, good morning. Shay, good morning to you. Sophia Williams, good morning.
And soon you will find a pretty soul that needs more shine. My world has come to
Waterstones, good morning. Kareem Ransom, good morning. Courtney the SLP, good morning to you.
There is no good or better. I think tonight
You still sounding loud today?
1, 2, mean right hook.
Okay, Marsha Reese, good morning. Miss Nuru, Silk City Socialist.
Never let up, no
Bill
need for speed, but
Potts,
keep your foot up on
Christopher
the gas
Shaw,
pedal.
good morning.
About having a golden award when God
Benson,
made me to
Melanie
be a
Dennis,
ice cold
Esther
meadow.
Brochin,
Why are you
Shelby Hall, Nat. Hey, what's going on, sister?
about me saying,
Afraid not to move. Testicles. Good morning.
I'm untouchable girl.
Good morning, everybody. Make sure you get your coffee, your tea, your drinks, whatever it is you need to get your morning started, y'all. Y'all stay tuned. We got one coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Say a prayer tonight to keep your soul tight.
And also that means Benjamin Dixon can't come through. Y'all get 30 minutes of yours.
I put the work in. Now I got the big bags that you call Perkins.
Yeah.
My world has come together. And maybe
Iris, good morning. Chris, good morning.
there is no good or better. I think tonight I'm gonna make it mine.
Welcome back. Today is Tuesday, December 14, 2021. We are going to, I really want to have this interview. And we know we're dealing with the time differential with our guests. They're doing some magnificent things over in LA, particularly with homelessness. There's various teams that are purchasing hotels and turning them into micro apartments for the homeless. That's one of the things that we wanted to discuss this morning, but there's a time differential, and so we won't have our guest this morning. That said, I want to go to this first clip of Christian nationalist MAGA pastor and GOP congressional candidate Mark Burns. We love him around here. As he tells the audience filled with COVID, I just want to stop there because it is an audience filled with COVID. Literally, but it's an audience filled with COVID, election, and QAnon conspiracy theorists, and he's telling them that we're here to take over. Let's listen to Pastor Burns.
Any law, and I'm gonna tell you, let me go ahead and piss off the mainstream media. Because every time I open my mouth and I say that any law that is a law right now that's contrary to the word of God should be outlawed and abolished in this nation. Do you believe that Jesus should be at the center of American politics in the United States of America? We're here to take over. I can't hear nobody, patriots. We're here to take over. God help me. We're here to take over. We're here to take over.
As you take over, please be sure, Pastor Burns, to update your resume and to remove all the things that you lied about in that CNN interview that you walked off of because you got called out for being such a prolific liar. Man of God. Anyway, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this guy or any even evangelicals that I haven't said over the last 10 years. They're false prophets. They represent a particular type of Jesus that can be weaponized for the rich and the powerful. The type of Jesus that is going to surely outlaw abortions, but say nothing about guns killing people in schools every single day. The type of Jesus that's going to charge you $3,000 to heal you, right? The type of Jesus that won't feed the sick, right? Or heal the sick or feed the 5,000, but the type of Jesus that's going to charge them $4.99 for a fish sandwich. That's the kind of Jesus that these people want to be at the center of America, not the liberating Jesus, not the religion, not a faith that will set people free. They want a faith that knock people across the head if they don't sleep with who they want them to sleep with. That's Pastor Mark Burns. That's the evangelical movement. In fact, I can't even put this all on Pastor Burns. Pastor Burns is like He's like the Johnny come lately. This is when, like when a company is already destroyed, and you put in a CEO to come in and take the fall. That's Mark Burns. This evangelical stuff has been going on for 40, 50, 60 years before this guy was even born. But he's coming in all of a sudden like he's the blackface of it. And he's totally cool with it because he's getting some nice checks. I personally, though, I'm not too fond of getting applauses from white folks when the same sentence would not give me an applause from black folks. Anyway.
This might be random, but I'm getting like Russell Crowe Gladiator vibes. At the end of that rant, he was about to say, are you not entertained? Is this not why you're here?
Oh, no, we're entertained. All right, it gets worse, folks. This is the last clip of the day. Again, we only have an hour show for you this morning. DJ Exclusive is on somebody's beach having a good time. And Rebecca Azor is not with us today. So this is going to be the last 2 minutes of today's episode. Patreon.com/like it or not. Patreon.com/the BPD show. You know the routine. Very special thanks to our friends over at Act TV who are partnering with us to make sure that you do more than watch, that you act. Again, a special thanks to David, our producer in the background, and Dwayne, our technical director in the background, and Done Right Media. I want to close with this last clip. It's a doozy. All right, this is right before Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, was getting ready to take the stage at the Reawaken American Conference in Dallas last weekend. Leah Dundas. She's an attorney, and she's listed as part of the legal team who America Frontline Doctors. I don't know if you remember or recall the American Frontline Doctors. Those are the demon sperm, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, quack doctors. She is a legal representative for them, and she took the stage and said that the COVID vaccine is analogous to genocide. It gets worse than that. Let's take a listen in.
We are killing mothers and fathers, and worst, we are killing our children. And that is a genocide. In 1940, the world sat silent and watched Nazi Germany experiment on medically vulnerable people. Why were they vulnerable? Because they were forced into quarantine detainment camps. What are we doing in Oz in Australia right now? What are we doing in Canada right now? The same thing. And we walked out of that Third Reich episode and we said, never again. We will never again experiment on people without their true informed medical consent. And yet here we are. This has got to stop now. The bullet train to Auschwitz has now arrived in other countries. In Slovenia, if you are unvaccinated, they are denying you gasoline and petrol services. In certain parts of Canada, if you are unvaccinated, you can no longer go to the grocery store. In our country, we have now killed 20,000 people from the COVID vaccine. And when I was a child in the 1970s, we pulled the swine flu vaccine off the shelf after 20 deaths. If that isn't a genocide, I don't know what is. And we are doing ourselves zero favors by calling it anything less than that. I will call it a genocide until the day I die.
Well, from the looks, hang on, David, from the looks of that audience and the Omicron variant, that day could come very, very soon, sister. I mean, come on. The Holy Ghost is not in that room as much as COVID-19 is in that room. The stupidity, the level of derangement that we're dealing with here. Pause. Let me stop. They have all the money. These sociopaths who will look at you and with the sincerity of all of their passion, I mean, she's screaming. She's like, the COVID vaccine is evil. It's like Hitler. And she's complaining about the 20,000 people that I doubt very seriously died of this, of the vaccine. I'm sure she's referring to the VAR system, the self-reporting system, right? I'm sure she's referring to the self-reporting system that is never verified. There's not a single case in that system that she's using that has been verified. And I guarantee you all of the little maggots have been logging on saying, ooh, I died of the COVID vaccine. This is how dumb America is. This is what gets all the finances and the capital in America. Do you see this stage? Do you see the production? Do you see the capacity? They have a multi-million-dollar operation going on, all to convince you to let yourself die of COVID-19. This is the absurdity of the moment. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, look, my family is Jewish. I don't think that in my direct line we had anyone that was lost in World War II during the Holocaust. Most of my ancestors came, I think, in the early 1900s before the war. But it's offensive. I mean, and it's not even so much offensive to, I mean, it is, but on a bigger level, it's offensive that you're going to sell people on something like this.
Yeah.
That's going to affect the masses to such a degree. It's not even just like you're a cult and you're going to have just these people drink the Kool-Aid. Right. You're streaming, you're going to the masses, and
they're taking over. Remember, they're taking over.
This is just like, it's dangerously obscene. It's just a whole nother level of almost comedy if it weren't real.
And here's the other thing. She's talking about the 20,000 that from the VAERS system. The VAERS is a VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Something Reporting System. I forgot what the E stands for. And if you go to that site, you can look at the bottom of it and look at the fine print, and it says these reports are not verified. She's concerned about 20,000 unverified reports. What do you think about this 800,000 confirmed deaths from COVID-19, sister? Be careful what you wish for. She said over her dead body. I wouldn't play with the universe like that. I would never put myself in a position where I am actively going to harm other people and mock the universe and say over my dead body. I couldn't bring myself to do that. I like my life too much. And I think the universe is a little bit more sarcastic and ironic than that. That said, I hope everybody in that room, I hope they're vaccinated.
Oh, yeah. Ben, who you kidding? You might have 0.05% of that room that got one vaccine shot, if we're lucky. If they're lucky.
Omicron variant is in there like Pac-Man after it got the power pellet, just bloop, 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 just racking up, all because of the level of stupidity and bigotry and ignorance and just propaganda. I mean, folks, that's all I got. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, how many people in that crowd have hydrochloroquine and ivermectin in their medicine?
In their blood. There's no vaccine in that room, but there's definitely ivermectin in that room. There's no Holy Spirit in that room. There's definitely Omicron variant in that room. That said, folks, have a great rest of your day. We will see you with the team tomorrow. We'll see everybody next time. Take care.
Dwayne caught off guard again.
No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, no, no. No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No. See, it's hard to be polite. It's easy being petty. Mama used to tell me, gotta use
y'all, I forgot to tell y'all, I met Tom Hanks once. I met Tom Hanks. He said he was rude as hell though. He was just so rude. So I asked for an autograph and all he wrote was thanks.
So be a light up on my path and a lamp under my feet. I know my faith's strong, but my flesh still kind of weak. When that victory be looking like the verge of defeat.
So many people here. Watch what I say.
That she can say sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words can't hurt me.
Oh, y'all get it now.
I've been right more than I've been wrong, and it still can't hurt me. No, it just can't hurt me. No.
Hey, y'all, also, I learned how to use disposable masks, like coffee masks or filters to brew espresso. I learned to use disposable masks to brew espresso because they're coffee filters. Coffee filters? Today in the background, talking about they might shut this channel down. Man, go to hell today.
It was just a misunderstanding.
Y'all know I ain't got no damn sense, man. Y'all leave me alone. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned. Our sister from another mister be joining us soon.
I checked your number twice, then I went home.
Okay. This is the last one. This is for my nerds out there. This is good for the nerds. How did Bilbo survive the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy? How did Bilbo survive the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy? Because all hobbits die hard.
I meant everything I said. You don't have to search no more.
Laura Strada, good morning.
You don't have to prove us to anyone. You don't need to worry.
All right, y'all. Well, we got our little Caribbean vibe going on. Jamaica, December, yay. All right, new patrons. We have Alex Z and Mark S, our new patrons, new Twitch subscribers. We have the Chicken Fried Dragon, who gifted a subscription to Carpe Pax and Antisocial Communists. We have Cluminani017, who resubscribed with Prime and commented, for the culture. That's right, for the culture. We appreciate you. Class Storm resubscribed. Andy from Ohio resubscribed. Hey, Andy. And said, hello. Miss you, Andy. Love you. Mimosa Dragon resubscribed and commented, good morning, everyone. And they have been subscribed for over 10 months. I feel you, Mimosa Dragon. Love you, mean it. Fellow content creator at ActTV James from the internet resubscribed and commented, well, what about her freeze pitch?
You don't need to worry.
I gotta find out what it means, but free speech, yeah. And also, an anonymous user gifted a subscription to Neon Death 07. So, anonymous user, we greatly appreciate you, man. We appreciate everybody, man. And if you want to as well, patreon.com/likeItOrNot, patreon.com/likeItOrNot, or patreon.com/the BPD show, so you can get exclusive content, laugh at my silly ass, get patron party access, all that good stuff, man. So make sure that you're going to take your ass on over there and get on that Patreon. You don't want to miss it. Miss all this time. Next patron party next week, if I'm not mistaken. Next patron party is next Friday. We're going to see what we go. Oh, is that Black Friday? I think it is. We'll have to see about that. Well, y'all stay tuned and we'll keep you posted, all right? Here's another banger for y'all. Y'all know what time it is. Y'all light them up, light them up. Shout out to Brother Ben, who's out there doing the work, man. We appreciate you, brother. I'll be looking for you on the TV today. Lunch break hot take. Good morning to you. Susan, good morning.
Look, I'm in line with the stars, I'm in sync with the earth. 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'm a ride for the squad, let up ties in the hearse. I've been on the vibe, kinda hard to describe. I'm in between, I'm good and it's fine, but I'm tired of the grind. Then I come alive in the night to realize I'm in the middle of the time.
Good morning.
I'm never so packed for the stack, never light on the back. Got a bag from the way that I ride it. Queen looking Tyson, do that ass survive, doing 80 to the house, then I hit it to the sky. Change haters on a tirade, continue crippin' and face be still, let that hate stuff fade. We all with the same, we all want a meal in the safe. I wanna live like I'm trying to reach enlightenment. Girl spill from my lips, feel big from the bip. Take a sip till I pass out. I'm trying to get grit, but it don't make sense. Cause you can lose life on this fast route. Yeah, turn thoughts to a cash cow. I might flip that to the glass house. I don't need the accolades, I'm in love with the chase. I just wanna eat, save a spot at the table. Beast with the slap, pin myself on the map. You long with the wind, but we knowing that it's cap. 5-hour flights, couple nights at the flat. To be real, couldn't see me making moves while I'm at. I'm still on the grind, limit time when I chat. Burn it down, sage, keep the demons away. When I write it, give a piece of myself to the page. I don't do it for the praise, love, that's just how I'm made.
From the glass in the mirror, yeah. Do it at me, old man, tryna pass in the fear. You're the first one to talk, but the last one to hear. Eyes blurry,
but I couldn't
Environmental
see
Coffee
that.
House, I appreciate you.
Start to feel like I'm on one. Settle in, I'll be here for the long run. I'm a slave for the cash, got snakes in the grass, no brakes on the end. But
Shoot the Dragon, that's a good one. Real quick, y'all, real quick. Shoot the Dragon said, what is black and rhymes with Snoop? What is black and rhymes with Snoop? Answer, Dr. Dre. These are facts.
Hear him talking, ain't right enough, tighten up. Everything that I came for, I left with. I don't bang sets, I just bang on the set list. Going past everyone I came for the break.
Environmental Coffee House, right. I'm that number one kind of Snuggie teddy bear kind of
This gold in my soul, got the same on my necklace.
Jay, that's absolutely right. It's a mini patron party with non-copyrighted music.